In your book, you also write about the role of police. There's about backing the blue. There's a very high number of police officers who are killed in this country. There's also a very high number of people who are killed at the hands of police in this country. You worked with Senator Cory Booker for a very long time on police reform legislation. That fell apart. One thing, though, is in your statement when those things did fall apart, you said you couldn't support something that defunded the police. But was that actually accurate? Because that bill would have spent millions and millions of dollars on new mandates for police, on mental health support for police. And so why in that statement did you say that it would have defunded the police?
Well, mostly, Leanne, because there were 11 sections that made local law enforcement ineligible for grants if they didn't meet a national standard. If you're looking at a department in Chicago or New York, that's one standard. If you're looking at a department in rural South Carolina with 10 sworn officers, it's a totally different level of expectations. You can't have one size fits all. There's a reason why local law enforcement is local. And so you have to understand the actual terrain where they work. You have to understand the communities where they serve in order to develop the policies. So making a high percentage of the number of law enforcement agencies ineligible for grants is defunding the police. That's not a pun. It's not a pointing the fingers on the other side. It's just a fact. The truth is that as we continue to look back at the police reform initiatives that I've had, going back to 2015, frankly, when I came up with my first piece of legislation to add $100 million for body-worn cameras so that there would be more clarity on those interactions with law enforcement, or my next iteration, the Justice Act, where we provided resources for training and we gathered more material, more information on the stops. We did a really good job, frankly, in my opinion, to try to see that those sides of that ledger again, to make sure we understood what's happening within our communities. But perhaps the most important point, Leanne, is that there's no binary choice between the law enforcement officers and the communities of color. That's a false binary. In order to support the communities that desperately need and want more policing, African Americans, 80% want the same level of policing or more. We have to support more resources for law enforcement. And you've seen that turn happen in this administration because of the incredible levels of violent crime that is now sweeping this country. I said it back at the end of 2017 or 18 at the failure of the Justice Act that things were going to get worse. That was just my prediction. And unfortunately, I see why it's gotten worse. You cannot take funds away from communities in law enforcement and not expect crime to go up.